Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. As many of us grow and become parents, we discover sometimes we parent from an old paradigm that either reflects how we were parented, or perhaps you're stuck at an emotional age and you don't know how to move beyond that. Today we'll be joined by a worldwide leader in the field of self-discovery and personal transformation. He's going to talk about 3 kinds of archetypes that you may be operating from as a parent. And if you're bringing unhealthy baggage from your past into your role as a parent, you can identify your emotional age in parenting and more toward a healthier parent-child relationship. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today, author of the book, The Emotional Edge. Our guest here on the Beyond 50 radio program, Crystal Andrus Morissette. Crystal, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Oh, it's wonderful. Thank you, Daniel.
Well, you've really had a wide range of experience growing up yourself, haven't you?
I have. Yeah, probably too much, and not something that I would want to wish on anyone, but you learn a lot. I mean, I often used to say, I wouldn't change anything, it made me who I am, and now as I'm, in my mid-40s, I think, if I could change some of those things, sure I would have, but I am who I am now today, and I've learned a lot because of a lot of traumas and tragedies, and I think that's how a lot of us grow, unfortunately, but we do.
Now, how did you come up with, I guess, the criteria to create the archetypes that we talk about here in the Emotional Edge?
Well, here's what's interesting. Obviously, when we talk about emotional age, it really actually baffled me. Scientists have theorized that we all have a biological age. So, for example, if you take really great care of yourself, you could be 50, but really biologically be 30. And so for, years, I'm the founder of an international coaching school. And for years, I would... all of us, our brain's pattern. Our brain is always looking for patterns to make sense of things. Probably because I came through so much tragedy and trauma, I was always searching for safe. Who is safe? What is safe? And, I also learned a lot from some of the great thinkers. Freud, Carl Jung, we sort of talked about, we have this idea of this trinity or this triad within us. And so as I was working with so many people, primarily women, I would start to almost notice a pattern, and that people sort of fell into one of 3 categories. They showed up as an emotional age, almost like a parent. So you could be 20 years old, but you just carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, selfless to the point of self-abnegating, a bit of a martyr, a rescuer, and we all have that in us. We all have that parent archetype. Freud might have said that was the superego, whereas we also all have this child part of us. We have this way of showing up that's maybe Freud would have referred to more as the id, which is sort of the selfish part of us, the frenetic, the scared, I need to get my needs met, I'm not sure how I'm going to get my needs met, that part of us. And then within all of us, we also have this sort of empowered adult. Some of us weren't really given role models to learn how to access it, but we all have that. So for me, it was working with so many people and quickly beginning to almost recognize. And I remember when I talked to my team, like I said, we're in over 30 countries now, so we have staff from all over the world, and a lot of it's over the telephone, and I would say you have to really be aware of how you're showing up, your voice, the tone of your voice. I said, you can either, and it was women, so I would say, don't be in your mother energy, don't be in your daughter energy, really show up like a woman, show up in your woman energy. And no one got it, and yet everyone got it. They sort of laughed and said, I've never heard this before, what are you talking about? I said, how do I know this and you don't know this? And they all said, well, we sort of innately know what you're talking about, tell me more. That became the basis of me saying, really, has no one coined this before? So I spent about 5 years in deep research. My professor of coaching at the school, she's a lawyer first and a psychologist, and I said to her, has no one done this? Research for me, find this. And so it really was just years of really recognizing and creating the patterns and testing them and testing them and testing them until it was, I pitched it to Random House, and they loved it and said, let's do this, because this is a profound concept that if people can get their heads around it, they don't need years of therapy to just really begin a sort of a mindfulness practice to see how you're showing up and to be able to see your results and then to decide, does this serve me?
It's also interesting as you were describing that. For some strange reason, I just had an image from the movie Prince of Tides, starring Nick Nolte and Barbara Streisand. And there's the scene they're about to approach really what's going on within the dynamic of Nick Nolte's family. And she simply asked the question, so where were you when all of this was going on? And he just simply says, I don't know. And she says, now come on, that's a child's answer. And it made me think about, as you were describing what you were and that coming together, how often we're really stuck in those roles even as we grow up.
Absolutely. I've met many...
You don't show up really approaching life genuinely with the kind of conviction or the authenticity that we want.
Well,
why do we hold on to that?
Well, I think, Daniel, when we were all young, and, whether we want to go back, there's a part of our brain that says, don't go back. That's the part of us that's in denial, the part of our brain that says, move forward, don't look back, you're fine, you've dealt with it. But then we also have this part of our brain that says, hey, we got wounds here that need tending to. And that part of our brain is not in denial. So, that to me, I often just, it's sort of the hidden part. It's the hidden part of us. And so at a time when we were all young, each one of us, some of us had some trajectory-changing traumas or tragedies like Nick Nolte did in that movie, and we make a decision in that moment almost to bury that part of us. That's really how it works. It's like, this is too much pain. I don't want to feel this ever again. So we sort of bury that wounded part of us, and then we often overcompensate. And so to break it down into the simplest way, we each made a decision. If showing up as an adult, we would be safer to be sort of the martyr, that we would, put our own needs last. We learned how to take care of people really well, and that somehow made us safe. Or we made the decision as we were younger that, screw this, my needs aren't getting met, I'm not taking care of anyone else, I need to take care of me. Nick Nolte literally had in that movie, and I just saw Barbra Streisand, she was magnificent, and I saw that movie years ago, and just heartbreaking. But the truth is, a lot of us have had trajectory-changing moments, and in that moment, the brain says, protect. And the brain will do whatever it must do to protect. And so for a lot of us, we get sort of jolted or stunted in some of these moments, and then we emotionally, when we're under stress, not all the time, we all have a part of our brain that knows how to survive, but in these sort of moments, this paralyzing thing can come out, and I call them emotional flashbacks. You don't actually have a memory of the moment, but somebody says something, somebody does something, and you are almost emotionally brought to a place you don't want to feel. And that's how emotional age really, that's how I can really start to almost identify how someone's showing up. And it almost becomes a bit fun when you can actually say, wow, look how, I had an argument with my husband. Instead of calmly communicating, I might run out of the room and slam the door. I still have a child archetype when it comes to love, perhaps. Whereas with your children, you might, be the opposite. You might say, when it comes to my children, I'm 80 years old. I will carry every wound, and I will protect them at all costs, and I will. So it's sort of this safer way to show up in the world until we recognize it's no longer safe. It's actually keeping me stuck now, and I want to mature beyond that.
Now, the three archetypes that I believe you talk about is mother, daughter, and woman. So,
well, there's men too. So it's actually
I kind of figured there had to be, but I was going to ask you about that. Is because I took the survey. I don't know that we actually got the results, but you do have a test in there that kind of gives you an idea of where you're at emotionally speaking. And I think we were pretty close to our ages anyway. So. Yeah,
well, I was thrilled. A couple months ago in June, I got an email from Oprah.com that said, we're using your emotional age quiz, and I was like, what? And then a couple of weeks ago, they featured it again on Oprah.com. So that really gave me sort of the juice, the affirmation, I think, so to speak, to say, yeah, we're onto something. So the quiz, yes. I mean, the reason I designed it and did it with mother energy, daughter energy, woman energy was just because so many women take the quizzes over men. But, of course, we all have it. It's really the parent archetype. The parent part of you is that part of you that is so selfless, and then we all have that child archetype, the part of us that's a little more selfish, and then we all have the adult archetype, and that's really the self. That's the healthy self. That's the healed self, sort of between this battle that we have inside, the mother or the father for you, and the son for you, this battle that goes on within us. How do I want to show up? A parent, a child. And until we heal that split, the truth is it often is even mirrored in our life with the relationship we have with our parents and our children. This is the healing that has to happen within so that our outer world and our relationships can become healthier.
Now, after a person, takes this quiz, you outline, the steps to be able to go from there. Now, is this usually one of the more difficult journeys that a person takes?
This type of healing?
Yes, absolutely.
You're going to get what you put in and what you're going to get out. Is it difficult? Sure. Sure, it can be difficult, and there's parts of it that are so fun and so freeing that it's worth the work. I think, with anything, and I think it's the extreme of your trauma. I think some of us have been deeply traumatized, and so you're going to go through it gentler, and you're going to move through the layers as you feel ready. I think what's beautiful about our brain is the brain will never let us process more than we're ready for. So, I have people that, I also have a course that I run in alignment with this book, and, I have people that have done it 25 times over the years. They just keep coming back and going deeper and deeper, and some say, wow, it was profound, and I'm not ready to go that deep. So with anything, this work allows you to go to the deepest place of healing, and it allows you to just keep it surface and fun. If you'd rather just realize, wow, I'm showing up like a mother with my husband, I need to change that. If you want to really dive down and figure out, why am I showing up like a mother with my husband, it's available for you. But, everybody's got to take it as they're ready, and that's what I think is so beautiful about your heart and your mind, is it will only do what you're ready to do.
I couldn't agree with you more, and it's a matter of being able to have the courage to take that step forward, too, should you decide to do that. And, you must have been through some pretty interesting experiences working with people over the years since you've created this. What have you seen as far as how people tend to change?
I love that question, because I've heard people say people can't change. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I used to hear that and think, that's awful. That's not true. And it's not so much that people change, it's that people heal. And healing is possible. And, some may call that a miracle, and I say, no, it's a process. Healing is a process. And if you have someone that can take you through the healing process, absolutely, those wounds become less and less. Your reaction becomes less dramatic, less extreme. There's a wholeness. It's almost like bit by bit we find all the wounded places, all the fragmented parts of your life. They're sort of scattered around, and we gather them up bit by bit and say, let's fit this puzzle back together that makes you you. So, of course, when the puzzle starts to fit together, there's a sense of relief. There's a sense of calmness that comes over you. There's a sense of hope, that you suddenly realize, wow, I don't have to be this fragmented, or I don't have to feel this broken inside, or I don't have to feel this. The brain is a brilliant machine, and if you know how to work with it, and it's very spiritual. I'm a very spiritual person, very spiritual, and for me, I think, wow, by the grace of God, I've healed. But let's be honest, I've put in the work, and when someone is willing to put in the time to realize you matter, your life matters, your healing matters. The greatest gift you can give to your family is a healed person, is a healed father, a healed mother. The greatest gift you can give to the world is a person that's healed or healing. And I think then it becomes very possible and actually quite probable. I've really witnessed thousands and thousands, I'm going to say women, because that's who I worked with for years, but now for the first time ever we've actually opened the course up to men, and that is probably because I've healed. So because I've healed, I'm not afraid to work with men now, and I think for a long time I was. So if someone says a change isn't possible, I would say, well, I'm living proof.
Now, what was it about men that you found yourself, I guess, at a crossroads that you needed to have that sort of healing?
Well, I was sexually abused. I was sexually abused growing up. I came from a lot of extreme dysfunction and neglect and betrayals right within my family. No one protected me. No one protected us kids, and we just weren't protected. And so there's a safety that I think healing. You have to have a safe place to heal. And for me, I had to create a very, very safe place, and I always thought I was here to help all the women in the world heal. Little did I realize I was creating the safe place for me to heal. And so the school that I founded was I always said, this is not anti-man, it's not anti-man. I think because I was afraid to go deep, to really share, to feel vulnerable in front of a man, and I think I thought that all the women, that they needed that too, and perhaps we did. We needed to be able to sort of share some of the traumas and tragedies. But what I'm realizing now is that men have so many traumas and tragedies too, and that we all need a safe place. And as long as we all have the right intention, and we're all there for the right reasons, I think I always just thought it would go somehow sexual, it would go somehow inappropriate, and maybe that's because somehow in me I hadn't healed the sexual part of me, so maybe on some level I took it into a sexual place. So it's really interesting. The world will always mirror back to you where you need your own healing and where you're really at. And so I probably had not healed my own sexuality, and now I'm finally ready at 46 to work with men.
I remember sometime, this was years ago actually, when you talk about sexuality, and I remember I was reading, I can't remember what the book was, but it talked about this very thing where this couple was together. And finally, the girlfriend decides, I'm going to go ahead and I've decided we're going to abstain from sex for a while. And the man was curious, well, why is this? She says, believe me, it isn't because I don't love you, and it's not because I'm not attracted to you, but I get this feeling that you're really not enjoying this. That somehow you're trying to, through this, prove something to yourself. And I'm, your girlfriend. I don't want to be here for you to do this. If you can come to terms to figure out what that is, then I'm all for walking that walk with you. And it turned out that it was something that, his mother had imposed on him. It never really even occurred to him that everything he did just wasn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a way that he was trying to, as you say, overcompensate for that by trying to be that.
Well, yeah, and I actually call that a child archetype. That's a child archetype. And the child archetype, imagine you're trying to make love, and you're showing inside you're still a wounded 8-year-old. How can an 8-year-old, or you're a wounded 16-year-old, and on some level the child archetype performs, because the child archetype doesn't know their worth. They don't know how worthy they are. So they're still in that performing mode, the way a child, if you've ever watched a baby, and the baby does something, and then everybody cheers, yay, and then the baby's eyes light up, and they realize, oh, I'm getting action, I'm getting attention. So they do the same thing again, and they do it again. So you learn to be a performer. And if you don't know your worth at the deepest level, you can go into relationships, and sometimes you end up as a man shifting into a parental role where you think you have to perform, and your job is to. It goes back and forth for a lot of us. And so when we don't know that you alone are enough, that you don't have to perform in the bedroom, you don't have to prove your worth to anyone, that, I can understand why. I don't know that saying to someone we're going to abstain, but I think being able to recognize what energy, if we called it that, or what archetype am I in when it comes to lovemaking? What energy or archetype am I in when it comes to parenting? What energy or archetype am I in when it comes to communicating my needs? You can be, we all move between them, and so that's why you can be so empowered, let's say, in your career, but then you're just such a mess when it comes to your family or your parents or your health, because in certain areas we made certain decisions, and so those decisions at some level were there to protect us. So that man, at some level, real thought to himself as a youngster, the safest way to be in a relationship is this way. This is what a woman wants. This is what I think women want. Not really knowing what he wants and who he is, and maybe that's what his girlfriend was trying to say, which is, it's a mindfulness. And I think as we can all start to really look at ourselves and say, how am I showing up? How am I really showing up here? And is this really serving me? Are my needs being met? Am I really fulfilled and happy in this? And if not, there's such powerful process and interventions that can help you recognize why and how it got there and how to heal that within yourself.
As a person steps back and really absorbs what you just said, I was just thinking of personal transformation expert and coach Anthony Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
And he tends to say, one of the number one things he likes to say is, we tend to get in our lives what we tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
And when you take listen to that for a minute and embrace it and say to yourself, as I show up to a present moment, let's say you're walking into your boss's office, you feel maybe you're due for a raise, what are you feeling in those moments? And I know in your book you talk a lot about that, really showing up and experiencing those feelings and saying, where is this really truly coming from? And I remember there was a time that a friend of mine was really, really frustrated about a situation where his new partner moved in. They had a stepdaughter, and it was just really eating at him. And apparently, she was one they were trying to really work with because she was, having some real issues in school and so forth. And finally, he said he had meditated on it long enough. It probably was a good several weeks, on this, what it was that was really bothering him. And he says one of the most miraculous things came, this really strange inner voice from deep in the abyss says, well, nobody ever helped me move things along.
That's it.
And he says, I started remembering back at a particular time in grade school where he was being punished, and he couldn't figure out why. Going to the office, being there all day long, listening to kids out there playing during recess, he's stuck in the office. And nobody was there to protect him. And he says, that's really what came up for me. And once I came to embrace and understand and work with that, it was easier to relate with the daughter.
Yes, his child archetype,
amazing,
his child was in charge, and it's really hard to parent a naughty, if you would call it, child when you're still a child. You're almost jealous. There's sibling rivalry between you and your child. So that's a beautiful, and I love even when I got to tell you, you sound like Tony Robbins a little bit, your voice. So that's sort of interesting.
I remember when Mark Canfield said that to me.
You do. I hear that. You have a very similar energy. But you talk about going into your office. Let's say for your listeners right now, we don't want to go so heavy that they go, oh, does that mean I have to go? But let's just imagine. Let's just take it back to something as simple as you're going in to get a raise. And imagine before you walk in that you could actually ask yourself, and you could get clear on, okay, if I were in my son energy, if I were my daughter energy, if I were a child archetype, well, I will tell you what I would do. If I was in daughter energy, I'll give you 3 examples. If I was in daughter energy, I would get myself dressed up as beautiful as I could look. I would put on a gorgeous outfit. I would wear high heel shoes. I would be sexy. I would be playful. I would walk in, and I wouldn't really know my worth, so I would think part of it had to be the way I performed and the way I giggled and I would have to be smart, but I really would have to put on a performance for my boss to get that raise. My mother energy, if I were in my mother energy, she would dress it down. She probably wouldn't wear a lot of makeup. She'd wear very flat little shoes. She certainly wouldn't use sex appeal. She would actually have a very difficult time asking for that raise. She would go in sort of humble, and she would hope that, if I just work hard enough, eventually they're going to see how good I am, and eventually I'll get that raise. And if I walk in and I ask for that raise and he tells me not yet, I will feel badly for asking. I'll feel badly that I was so thoughtless and selfish that the company is going through a harder time than I realize right now. I will buck up, suck it up, and I will do whatever I have to do even to not get that raise before I even walked in. Woman energy, I would really put thought to what I've brought to the company, what I love about the company, where I would want to see myself in initiatives in the company. I would get some reports ready. I would look like $1 million, but I would not use my sexuality. I would not do anything that I would think that if I would feel embarrassed afterwards. I would be such a professional, easygoing, just really on my game. And that is how quick it can be, and you can almost start to look at that. Like when I have a mother that contacts me and says, I don't know what to do with my children, I quickly help her. Well, what would your mother energy do with your children right now? And she would think about it, and I'd say, what would your daughter energy do right now? And she would say, oh, she'd probably kick them out. And what would your woman energy do? She'd probably have a conversation with them, let everybody calm down, let's go in, let's have some objectives, let's communicate in a win-win way. Yeah, sometimes it can just be that simple. I mean, if you really want to go in and figure out, how did I get like this? It's a magnificent process. However, if you want to make quick and fast changes in your life right now, you can quickly do that. Each one of us almost know. And if you don't know, you just think, well, what would the most selfless part of me do? What would be the most selfish part of me do? And what would be the most balanced, healthy version of me do? And that quickly becomes almost like a quick call to mind. Okay, I'm in an argument with my husband. What would my daughter energy do? She would scream and cry and run out of the room and slam the door. My mother energy wouldn't even argue. She would just suck it up and be quiet because she wouldn't want anyone to be upset. But what would my woman energy do? My woman energy would have to listen, would be open-minded. She would be able to validate what he was saying. She would have to be able to look at it from both perspectives. She would be able to speak back in a way that's calm and respectful and dignified for both people, and we would find resolution.
I was just it's interesting is you're putting all this into a perspective, and our show many times we've actually talked about generations and how they would be, for instance, at home, in the workplace, and so forth. And one of the big ones, obviously, is the millennial generation. It seems to be staying at home a lot longer. It's almost as though they almost never seem to leave the house. But that's not all of them. Because I also like to defend them and say, look, man, there's some millennials out there that are kicking some tail.
Yeah, I've got a 19.
But the fact is you take a look at this generation, though, for the most part. Let's just take an overall perspective. What are your thoughts on what's going on there?
Geez, I've got a 19. She's about to turn 20 in a month, and I've got a 21-year-old that's just about to turn 22, and I'm completely in awe of these children. I'm in awe of them, and I think that when we were kids, our parents and the older generation said, these kids, they don't get it. They have no respect. They don't understand anything. Here's what's happening that I think in the world. For the first time, we were all taught, I don't know about you, but when I was a little girl, even though I was living through abuse and craziness, we were taught that what goes on in this house stays in this house. Secrets are secrets. You respect your elders. Children are to be seen and not heard. You keep your mouth shut. And all of that, I get the level of respect. I will say to my daughters, you are allowed to question anybody, but you must do it respectfully. You don't snub someone. You're not rude. You don't scream. You don't yell. You don't rage. You are allowed to question. You are allowed to, and even when they talk about all the phones and all this, I think we will always be evolving. Life is an evolution, and we are not going backwards. We are moving forwards. And this generation of kids, as much as a lot of them we will say, I can only speak from my experience, and my children are concerned about people's rights. They're concerned about the planet. They think about, I don't think we're as far off and in such a bad place that everybody thinks we are. I really don't. I think that we have a generation of children who are saying, if you abuse me, you might get videotaped. So,
yeah, that's the truth.
We got abused, and our parents said, if you tell us so. My father used to say, therapy is for losers. God is not real. People who go to church are weak, and so it just all implodes on us. And so we learn how to function the best we can with the wounds underneath. And I will tell from experience that it takes an enormous amount of effort to function well when you're wounded. And I've done it. I functioned extremely well for most of my life. I built an empire. I truly did. And it wasn't until I got into my 40s that all of a sudden all the pain and all the stuffed down stuff started bubbling up to the surface, and I started having dark nights of the soul. And I started thinking, I can't carry on. Like, I literally thought to myself, I understand why Robin Williams, and this might sound morbid, but when you're a superhero, and the idea of not being a superhero, because it's extremes. And so many extremely successful people actually live in the extremes. And so being the best or nothing at all. And so for a lot of us now that are in our 40s and our 50s and our 60s, all of a sudden we're starting to say, wait, okay, I tucked away that pain. I held it down. I didn't deal with it. I didn't talk about it. I've done the best I can. I've really done it pretty good. But, what about me? And, I just thought if I just gave and served, and I was in mother energy for most of my life. I was able to help a lot of people, and it was beautiful. And I look now and think the love that I get back from so many people because of the love I gave is enormous. But I really did have to reach a point that I thought, I can't help another soul right now until I help me. I have to heal my damn heart because it hurts too much. And that became my primary focus in the last 5-6 years, and that's really how the Emotional Edge came about. It was time to get real. It was time to heal the wounds. It was time to do the work that I had done with everybody else. It was time to do it for myself.
One of the most interesting things, too, when you say work, is that you have to put in the work to do this. And some people might think, well, this just seems like a lot of work. And I would probably say to them, and certainly you can chime in, look at how much work it takes you being the way you are now.
Exactly.
And this is lifelong. We're talking about changing that so you have a different life. What would it be like if life wasn't work anymore?
Right, you're going to work anyways. I mean, it's like when someone says that, I want to say, you go to work every day. Everybody has to go to work. We all have to work. We all have to work. But what if the work you were putting in was lightening your load? and that eventually all the muck and the crap that's buried down inside of you was emptied out, and you felt a sense of lightness now. And when I wish there was a different word for it than work. Process, healing, self-care, caregiving. That's what we're really talking about. Deciding that you matter. I truly, it sounds so crazy, Daniel, I didn't know I alone mattered. I mattered because I was a mother. I mattered because I was a boss. I mattered because I was writing books, and I would actually sometimes get in the car and cry. I'd be out driving, and I would think, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what to do. I have to be on for all these people, and they all look to me, and they think I'm so amazing, and I have my shit together. Oops, I shouldn't have said that. I have my stuff together.
That's okay. But Tony Robbins would have said that.
So, but there was also part of me that I thought, I'm still human. I didn't know how much my life alone just mattered. Even if I never write another book, everything falls apart, my businesses go into bankruptcy, even if all that happens, even if I fail all kinds of people, I still matter, and you still matter, and our lives matter. And when something in my brain clicked and I realized, Crystal, but you matter, not just because you're a somebody something, just you matter. And that alone began to change something in me, and I could show up more authentically, and I truly can't believe how my career has exploded since I decided I matter, because I always thought that was selfish. So there's a really beautiful fine line between sort of showing up in the noblest parts of your selfishness and the noblest parts of your selflessness, and something comes together in that place where you really realize there's a me in there. There's me, myself, and I matter.
Very well said. I want to thank you for taking the time to be on our program today and sharing your wonderful work. For our listeners, is there a website they can find out more?
Oh, my international coaching school, SWAT. I know people always laugh and say, why'd you call it that? Simply Woman Accredited Trainer, but really we're the new Special Weapons and Tactical Team. So SWATinstitute.com. There's tons of givebacks, mentorship coaching at no charge, tons of givebacks. If they want the actual book, theemotionaledge.com, you can find it there, and that's the name of the book, The Emotional Edge. And, just come find me. I would love to connect and just start to build a really healthy, nice relationship with your listeners. So we have tons of givebacks, though.
Well, very good. Crystal, thank you so much for joining us here on the program today. What a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
You too. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. You can also discover more by visiting us at Beyond50Radio.com. That is the number 50. Sign up for our weekly e-newsletter and stay up to date with what's going on in the Beyond 50 community. You can also discover more by visiting us as well at Facebook and Twitter at Beyond 50 Radio. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program. And remember, live your day past halfway.